All right, so we got a home buying seminar that I'm doing here online for you to watch and learn because I know it can get a little crazy not knowing what to do. So, today we're going to go through some of the steps that I typically like to do with my clients, and I'm going to bring it to you, to the public. It does apply for anyone that is maybe a first time home buyer. And even if you've purchased a home before and you're from a different state, I would say that you would probably want to listen to this video because it's going to help you understand how things are done here in the Tampa Bay area, or if you want to say the Florida area. And if you're someone who maybe has purchased a home in the past and it's been years, this will be a nice brush up for you because things do change. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to use my guide here that I typically give out to my clients. And I'm going to have a link here for you guys too, that if you want this guide, you can absolutely have it. Just click on the little link below and you can get it. But let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to be covering topics, the steps of things that happen from the time that you go under contract. And I'm going to be giving you guys two examples as I kind of go through this with you. I'm going to be talking about new home construction, and then I'm also going to be talking about what we call resale. Now, while I'm talking right now, you might want to grab a pen and paper and take some of these notes down. Okay. Or I guess you can always play the video back and watch it all over again. But for the purpose of this video, I want you to know that resale, my definition of resale is anything that is not brand new. So the date of this video is 2024. And if it's a 2023 or older, in my world, this is considered a resale property. And the reason why is because it's a whole different kind of experience of buying a home that someone already owns versus buying a brand new home from like a big company name, right? DR Horton, Lennar, KB Homes, whatever builder you're going to be buying through. Okay. So I'm going to give you both experiences. We're going to talk about some of the steps. I'm going to talk about some of the things that you want to be looking out for. And I think this is where it's going to get super interesting for you guys. All right. So let's dive into it. I am in the Tampa Bay area. My name's Jose Mejia. Even if you're not in the Tampa Bay area, a lot of this information could be super helpful for you. Okay. So make sure you tune in. Again, take a lot of notes. Guys, I've been doing in real estate for a long time. I got a mortgage background. I got a credit repair background. I have a good idea of what I'm doing. So I'm a credible source. Okay. But let's get into it. Let me get into the slides. And if you notice here, some of the table of contents is about the home buying process, getting pre-approved. If we have enough time, I'll get into some of the financials part of it. And then after that, we should be done. So this should be a good 30 to 45 minutes. Let's go ahead and get started because I don't want to keep you guys waiting. All right. All right, let's get into it. I'm going to skip. This is my team. I'm going to go past that and we're going to get straight into the nitty gritty of things. And yes, this is absolutely important, right? When you get started, you kind of want to have an idea of what kind of home you're looking for. You want to know what location you're going to live in. And of course, you want to find a realtor that you feel is valuable to you. And today, more important than ever, you really want to make sure you find someone that is not just so much a door opener, but someone who can sit down with you and really understand what you're looking for. That way it makes your job a lot easier and it doesn't feel like you're doing all the work. Okay. All right. I'm going to go past this because this is not the most important thing. I want to get really into the details of this stuff. But generally, you're going to meet with your agent. You're going to get pre-approved, find your house, get the offer accepted. And then you start going through these steps like ordering the inspection, appraisal, and putting down the deposit money. And that's what we're going to do right now is we're going to get into more of the nitty gritty of this thing and really talk about some of these steps. Okay. So, all right. Some of these words that you should know is very much self-explanatory how you see it on the screen, right? And the ones that I'm going to pick out the most are the ones that I'm going to talk about for you to know. Number one, it's going to be the appraisal. This is basically going to be the person that looks at the collateral, the value of the collateral of the home. So in this example, the whole video today, we're going to use a $300,000 house. Okay. So with an appraisal, this person is going to go look at the value of the home just to make sure that it's worth it. Because if the bank is borrowing you a certain amount of money, they need to make sure that it's not undervalued. The home inspector, now this is a person that actually goes out to the property. They're going to thoroughly look at the home. They're going to check the attic. They're going to check behind the walls to see if there's any moisture. right? They're going to thoroughly inspect the home. And an inspector and an appraiser, they always get confused. Every time I'm talking to people, some people think the appraiser is the inspector and the inspector is the appraisal. That's not the case. Okay. The appraiser does look at the property, like its condition, but they look at it at a very basic eye level. They're not going to be going on top of the roof and going into the attic, right? That's more of a thorough job, and that's what the inspector does. All right. The earnest money, this is your good faith payment. This is you telling a seller or a builder how serious you are and how willing you are to move through the steps of the contract in a timely fashion. Because believe it or not, there are people who are not that serious. They want to go out there and they just want to look at houses and they want to move forward and then say that they don't want the house. And a seller doesn't really want someone who's not that serious. Okay. And the reason why is because sellers are going through situations in life. They might be moving out of state. They might be going through a real hardship situation. And so they want to try to filter down to the buyers who are serious. And the way they do that is by figuring out exactly who has earnest money, who's going to put their money where their mouth is and actually follow through the process. All right. Hopefully that was good and explainable. Let's keep moving forward. A lot of these buyer frequently asked questions, I'm not going to go through them. Again, if you want this document, you can absolutely have it. And then let's get into, all right, let's do this. Let's get back into this, okay? We're going to be going back from 8 into 9, okay? So this is what I want you guys to do is I want you to get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, okay? And then when you draw a line down the middle, I want you to put a line across. And it's almost going to look like a T. On one side, I want you guys to put resale. And then on the right side, I want you to put new home construction. Okay. Because they're two different experiences. Okay. And so what typically happens is that when you look for a real sale property and you find the house that you're looking for, a contract is done in writing. It gets submitted to the realtor that's representing the seller, and then they sign off on it. And once they signed off on it and you've signed off on it, it's a legal binding contract. Okay. And so this is the first step where you can actually celebrate and say, wow, we got the house, right? However, I have to caution you, there's more work to be done. And when you sign off, it's definitely a good reason to celebrate, but it also triggers specific contingencies in the contract that have to do with the inspection, deposit money, appraisal, and financing. Okay. Now, the reason why there's dates here is because the seller wants you to do things by a specific timeline so that things keep moving along. Okay. And the main thing here is that we want to ask ourselves what happens if we are late or if we are delayed, right? There is money that can be lost, guys. And this is what I want to talk to you guys about today, right? Okay. So when you've drawn up the terms of the offer, you've told the seller how much you're going to give them for their house. The very first promise you're making has everything to do with the earnest money. And that's that box in the middle. Okay. And this is, again, showing good faith that you are moving forward with the house. And if you look at this, you'll see a range of 1 to 3% of the purchase price. So if we are talking about a $300,000 house, that could be anywhere from $3,000 to $9,000, right? That would be the earnest money. Now, this earnest money is typically, and I use that very carefully, typically it's due within 3 business days from the time that everybody signed. So if the last party signed today and the date of this video is Wednesday, that means that that money would be due on Monday because Monday is considered the business day, right? It's due in 3 business days. Or to make it easier, just in case I got it wrong there, let's say the offer was accepted on Tuesday, the money would be due at the title company on Friday by 5 p.m. Okay. Typically, what happens is you make the deposit, you save a receipt, and that way, when you save the receipt, the mortgage company is actually going to give you credit towards that deposit for your cash to close. And I'll get into that in a little bit. Okay. But that is the first promise you're making to make sure you fulfill and the seller is happy with the first action. And then you continue with the rest of the process. Now, The reason why there's a range between 1% and 3% is because some buyers might come in with a bigger earnest money. And the reason why that might do that is because they want to show the seller how committed they are to actually moving through the process of getting that house. And what typically happens is that when you have competition of buyer one and buyer two for one specific house, it could very well be that the person with the higher deposit actually wins the property just because they had a higher deposit. Okay. Now, if there is no competition and you're the first one to submit an offer, and let's say the property's been on the market for 30 to 60 days, it's not out of the norm to offer something less than 1%. Okay. So if you're watching this video and you feel like you're limited with funds, um, don't feel like it has to be 1%. That is the standard. That is what is expected. If a home is fairly new on the market, I would expect, as someone representing a seller, I would try to expect at least 1% or something super, super close to it. Okay. All right. Now we move on to the second promise. And the second promise is the home inspection part. Okay. And again, I'm going to use this word very carefully. Typically, typically, the seller wants you to have the inspection completed, and they want you as a buyer or a buyer's realtor to communicate with them if you're going to proceed with the house or not. Okay. And the reason why they want to know this is because they might be selling you the house as is, and they might be prepared not to make any repairs. And if you're not going to move forward with it, they're just going to put it back out on the market and try to find another buyer for it. Okay. Now, just because it's as is doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to make any repairs, but you should prepare that they might not, right? So, when a seller wants you to do a quick inspection, usually it's around 7 calendar days. The norm is about 7 or 10 calendar days, 15 being the highest, but generally 10 calendar days is sufficient. 7 days can also be done, but both you and the realtor that represents you, you have to move pretty quickly and communicate well so things are done in a timely fashion. Now, when you order a home inspection, just know that first of all, in the state of Florida, doing a home inspection is optional, but you highly you want to do it, right? Because you don't want to buy something that falls apart on you a little bit later. You want to do your diligence, okay? You want to be able to choose whatever home inspector you want to use. You don't have to use the one that the realtor recommends to you. You're the one hiring the person, you're the one paying them, so you can choose wherever you want. Now, most of the time, real estate agents will have recommendations of inspectors that you can use. I generally would ask them for at least two different parties at the very minimum. That way you can decide which one you want to use. And that decision really kind of boils down to you, right? Now, having the property inspector identified, having it scheduled, having it performed at the property, looking at the report and evaluating that report to determine if you're going to move forward or not is everything that we need to do within a matter of 7 to 10 calendar days. Okay. If it is not done on a timely fashion, a couple of things can happen. If we don't communicate with the other party our intentions to proceed or not proceed, and we don't do it within a timely fashion, what could happen is you might lose that deposit money that we talked about in the beginning, whether it's $3,000 or $9,000. So, this is why it's super important to follow a path to, first of all, strategize before you go under contract and to be very diligent through the process to communicate with your realtor so that things are being done. You don't risk losing that deposit money. Okay. The typical cost of a home inspector, I would say, is anywhere from $600 to $800. And the saying that they have that whatever it is that you pay, that's what you're going to get. That's what I find to be true. Okay. So it is up there in price. However, it is this normal. And once you spend that money, it's gone. No one's ever going to reimburse you. Okay. So if you get the report, and let's say there is some alarming things on there. Let's say the roof is terrible, the plumbing is leaking, and that house is just falling apart. As long as you communicate with your realtor and you communicate to the seller and their realtor that you don't want to proceed with the home on a timely fashion, then you're no longer legally binding to that contract and you can get your deposit money back, right? You can get out of there. Okay. Or what can also happen is that you might want to ask the seller to make certain repairs, right? Because you like the house and you are not necessarily turned off by some of the things that popped up on the report, but there might be one or two things that actually concern you. Okay. And you can ask the seller to make those repairs, and it's a possibility that they'll make the repairs, right? And so if they do make the repairs, you always want to make sure you request that a licensed person does it. You want to make sure that you save any kind of documentation or receipts. And this will help you and protect you so that the person, the seller, is not taking any shortcuts. And it also shows evidence that the repairs were done. Okay. Now, if it's something super minimal, like, I don't know, like painting or something, and it's like a small amount of paint, that's maybe something you're not going to get a licensed contractor for. But I think you catch my drift there. Okay. Another thing that can happen is that you can ask the seller to reduce the price of the home instead of making the repairs, right? And so these are all different things. These are all different things of negotiation that can occur. And you need to know what good can happen and what bad can happen. Okay. All right. So far we've covered the deposit money. Now we've covered the inspection part of it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right there. And we're going to go to the other side of your sheet where we're talking about new construction homes. Okay. New construction homes over in the Tampa Bay area. You have them all over the place, right? You can find them, and there's different builders, different companies. And because there's different companies, that means there's going to be different expectations. So we're going to go back to the first step of talking about earnest money. And typically, what happens with most builders is that you will meet with the sales rep. They'll listen to what you're trying to find and what your situation may be. And then they're going to show you homes that might already be built or homes that are going to build. They're going to show you the community. They're going to show you everything about it. It's typically about a 45-minute to an hour process, but it can actually be a really good experience. Now, once you've discovered that that's the place you want to be, the very first thing that that builder is going to ask you is, hey, now that I know that you're interested in this specific floor plan, the very first thing that we need you to do is get pre-approved through our in-house lender. Now, the reason they want you to do that is because there could be some benefits and some financial incentives that they're offering you, but they also just want to know that you are a good credit scorer and a good borrower, right? And so even if you don't take advantage of their incentives and you don't want to use their mortgage company, it's a possibility that they ask you to just get at least pre-qualified with them just so that they know that they're good to go. Because once they put that home under contract, they want to make sure they're putting it under contract to the person who's qualified to get it. Okay. Now, let's just assume that you're approved and everything's good. What will typically happen is that that sales rep within 24 hours, if not that very moment, they're going to start preparing a contract, and you have to be ready with deposit money. Okay. Now, the amount of the deposit money can vary. It can vary based on what builder. I've seen some builders take low as $500. And then I've seen some builders ask for the whole down payment of whatever type of financing you're using. So if you use an FHA financing and then you buy a house for $300,000, that's going to be about $10,500. They're going to ask you for the whole 10,500 right up front. Okay. So it varies based on the builder. There could be some exceptions made as well. But just know that the expectation of getting that money is usually within those first 24 hours, because that specific builder might also have other sales reps in that community. And those sales reps are competing against each other. And they could very well have someone that's interested in that same house that you're looking for. And really, whoever puts that deposit money down first is the person that's actually getting that lot or getting that property. Okay. The second thing now we're going to jump into is the inspection on the new home construction homes, because I see it all the time. A lot of people make the mistake of skipping out on doing a home inspection on new homes. Why? Because most people feel that when you're buying a brand new home, what can possibly go wrong with the house, right? And the truth of the matter is that there's a lot that can go wrong. And so what you want to do is you actually want to have, at the time that you're writing the offer and doing the contract, you actually want to tell that sales representative, hey, I'm highly interested in hiring my own third-party inspector to do their diligence on my part. What are the requirements? What is the expectation on your guys' side? So that I'm well prepared to get my person out here based on what your criteria is. Okay. And if your home hasn't like been built, like if they haven't poured out the slab or put out the frame, you also might want to consider doing multiple inspections. You can do like two, three, maybe even four home inspections at every phase, at every stage of the building process. And if you do that, you're giving yourself a lot of peace of mind. A lot of people get caught up with the sales rep telling them that the county comes in and checks the building code, permits, and all this other stuff. And listen, it's not to say that they don't, they do. But at the end of the day, you need someone that's working for you that is a professional in this part of the process. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the appraisal part. And this is going to apply to both resale and new home construction. Remember, the appraisal portion of this is that person is actually going out there to look at the value of the home, whether it's new, whether it's a resale, it's the same process. Okay. Now, what could happen here is that you could actually get into a situation where you're buying a $300,000 house and the price, the value of the appraisal value comes in at 290. That's going to be a huge problem because the bank is borrowing you a loan based off 300 grand. So the only way, a couple of ways that this could be fixed is that if you pay the difference out of pocket on top of everything else that you need in terms of the down payment, closing costs, everything else you have to cover, or the seller agrees to reduce the price of the home and sell it to you for 290. Okay. Now, this is another phase of negotiations because if something like this happens, there is a possibility that you could risk losing deposit money. Okay. If you don't have the proper addendums and things in place. But if there is no agreement between both parties, and let's say you put the proper addendums in place, those $600-700 report for the appraisal that you spent, gone. You're never going to see it again. You've already spent money on the inspection, so that's gone. But then you have the possibility of getting the deposit money back. So the further you get into this process, the more riskier it gets, right? And so you need to know what happens in all these scenarios. Now, the opposite can happen, right? I've seen this quite a few times with new homes, is where you buy a home. Let's say it's like a almost like a new community, right? They have like maybe 3 or 4 houses that they've built. Let's say they have 10 houses built and they have plans to build like 100 homes in there. But you caught it so early on and you made a decision to buy a home so early on in the building process of when they first open up that community. That's when builders typically have like their lowest prices because once they start building in there and people are buying, they start increasing the price of the homes. So if you get in there early, you might buy a house for 300 grand and then your home finishes being built like 4 to 6 months later. And then all of a sudden that house might be worth, they might be selling it for 315 grand. So it's not out of the norm for the appraisal to come in at $315,000. Okay. And if that happens, as long as there's no kind of special verbiage in the builder's contract, you will still get the home for $300,000, even though it's worth 315. And that should be some brownie points to you because you made a decision early on. Okay. So we've covered deposit money, we've covered the home inspection, we've covered the appraisal. And now what we want to get into is we'll talk a little bit about closing costs because this is part of the process that you need to worry about because it has to do with money. And let's just make this distinction right now. The down payment, which you see in this box right here, is completely different from closing costs. Okay. If you're using FHA financing, down payment is typically 3.5% of the purchase price. Again, on a $300,000 house, that's $10,500. If you buy a resale property, the typical standard amount for closing costs is 3% of the purchase price, and that's about $9,000. For a new home, it's anywhere from 4 to maybe even 5%. So it could be anywhere from 12 to 15 grand in closing costs. Okay. So with resale, you don't know what a seller is going to pay, if anything at all. So it really boils down to your realtor to understand and see that situation and understand what they can negotiate on your behalf and what they can't. Okay. With builders, they will typically promote and tell you what they're going to offer for closing costs. And sometimes it could be actually pretty good deals. And in other cases, depending on the season and how sales are going for them, sometimes it's not as much. And so you want to have a good idea of what the cash to close is once it's time to go to closing, right? You want to have an idea what your down payment is, what the deposit money is that you gave, and what closing costs are covered and what closing costs are not covered. And that's going to show you the end result of what money is expected at closing the day that you sign your keys. All right. So, guys, that is a quick glimpse for you to understand what happens when you go under contract, and what are the steps, what's the good that can happen, and what's the bad that can happen, right? Now, you want to make sure you experience taking a look at everything, both resale and new homes, especially on the first day that you're looking at properties, because you want to get a good grasp of what it is that speaks to you the most and what gives you peace of mind. I hope this was super helpful. Make sure you check out the other videos. Until then, make sure you put the comments below. Talk to you soon.